Hey Nick, thanks for coming on the show. And we were just talking about the book Digital Gold when it came out by Nathaniel Popper, and there's another book actually, Bitcoin Billionaires by Ben Mesrick that I love. And you were telling me that the story was gripping in a way for you. And I have a
Yeah.
funny story about that. Well, thank you for coming on the show.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Charlie. Really happy to be here. Yeah,
Uh,
the book was like part of my journey to Bitcoin too. It's kind of surreal, to chat to you about it because you're one of the main characters. But yeah, that was part of my journey too. I found it so I called it the Bitcoin Bible for a while because that was like the only history book we had
it
about
almost
Bitcoin.
looked like a Bible, right? And it was a black cover with gold letters. I remember when that book came out, I was actually in prison, and I had by this point, I brutally honest with you, by this point, I was like 4 months into prison, and when you're doing an 18-month stay, you're like that fourth, fifth month, you're in the weeds of it. You're like, oh shit, I just did all this time, and I have all this more time to do. And
Yeah.
that book came out, and by that time, I had basically given up all my existence. I assumed that Bitcoin was over. My world in Bitcoin was over. This was 2015, end of
Right.
2000. I thought my world was over. And during this time, like Ethereum was being conceptualized and founded, like Bitcoin was making leaps and bounds, even though it was going through like a heavy bear market. But I wasn't getting this information. I had no phone calls. Like the letters I was getting was no one was like, oh, hey, by the way, like the industry's doing great. You should know that, like a Vitalik is launching and talking about Ethereum at this Bitcoin conference last week in Miami. Like, by the way, that's how he announced.
Bit yeah,
Yeah,
Bitcoin Miami,
exactly.
right?
Um, no one was telling me that. So I'm sitting here like thinking that the whole industry's dead and I'm over. And all of a sudden, I see these other inmates walking around with this book called Digital Gold. And I'm like, wait a minute. I remember that guy Nathaniel was writing that book. And I'm like, bro, can I see that book for a second? No. He hadn't even read it yet. Then if I went over to him and I'm like, let me just leaf through this book really quick. And my name wasn't in like any of the jackets. And I just started leafing through. I'm like, oh my God, I'm like a quarter of this book right now.
Yeah.
And I got
Yeah.
so scared because you don't want to be above the radar in prison. You don't want anyone to know who you
Oh,
are
uh,
under the radar. Cause I was with, congressmen, with politicians, with former police officers, detectives, and then you're mixed in with everyone, with drug dealers and child molesters. It's all everyone. It's a big hodgepodge. And you don't want to know people know who you are. So I'm like walking around and I remember trying to downplay the whole thing. Like, no, that's not me, that's someone else. Or I just kept making up all this crap that it wasn't me or someone else was wrong or this is another Charlie. Because as long as I was able to sow doubt with the other inmates, they didn't have any other communication on the outside to verify if my information was right or wrong. So I was able to like keep that under the radar for a while. And then
wow.
the prison administration actually added it to their book of banned books. They have a banned book list. So you couldn't get it in.
Why would they ban digital gold, man?
I don't know. They banned digital gold. They ban like all these. They banned a lot of books actually. Like anything related to like finance. That they Bitcoin was like Silk Road seemed as like scammy. So like someone in the prison administration saw digital gold Bitcoin and said this book can't be allowed in. It's a crazy.
So I would have thought you would have had like street cred with the other inmates for being like high profile Bitcoin prosecution, probably the first one. Like,
The
Bitcoin
evil
was like a
eye,
glamorous, sexy thing.
the evil eye is very much prevalent in prison. Growing up, I was taught in a very superstitious household that people can put an evil eye on you. And if they're jealous with envy, they can put an evil eye on you. And I try to follow this my whole life. Downplay everything. A quiet fortune is a virtuous one, right? So
Right.
in prison, it's worse though, because if someone puts that evil eye on you, I would see friends boasting about something, and then other inmates get jealous very easily. And the next
Hmm.
morning, your friend is gone. His soul cell is cleaned out. All of his stuff is gone. Because what happens is the administration doesn't want any any issues between any of the inmates. So there are other inmates that would go to the administration and say, "This guy's doing this." They thought I was a bookie. They would shake my locker down every week. So you want to just stay under the radar, be cool. I almost got the crap beat out of me the first week because I would just walk around like my shit didn't stink, And you can't
Mm-hmm.
do that. You can't act like that. You have to be even. You have to treat others with that very base level of respect. The stupid word respect. You'd hear it every day. You don't give me respect, 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 respect. Most people don't even know what that definition of that word means. And it like everyone assumes that respect is owed to you. Like you're just because you're human, you should be
Mm.
respected. And that's not the case. I feel like I've been talking about so much on this show. Hey everyone, I am Charlie Shrem, and you are listening and watching Untold Stories, where twice a week, or maybe really every day, we get to dive deep with some of crypto's most influential leaders, thought provokers, brilliant people, brightest crayons in the box, the sharpest tools in the shed, and those people who make me talk too much. But I like to have other people too who talk better to really find out how this industry came to be, because I feel like if we can understand the beginnings and the people involved and the who's and the what's and the where's and the why's, we'll never forget where we're going. And if we never forget where we're going, the experiment of Bitcoin will have succeeded. And I think I forgot who said it in 1984, maybe it was Hayek or someone. He said that we're never going to take money out of the hands of the government violently. We're going to have to take it in a very sly way where they won't know about it. And it's a
Mm-hmm.
brilliant, brilliant quote. Nic Carter, thank you so much for coming on the show. You're a partner at Castle Island Ventures. You have your own podcast called On the Brink. Um, you are the co-founder of Coinmetrics, and you were the one of the first crypto asset analysts at Fidelity Investments. And when I was doing my research, I was a little bit jealous because like I've always that's like the best. Isn't that a great job? Like where you get to be a crypto analyst. I'm jealous. I'd love if someone hired
Yeah.
me to be a crypto analyst where I get to just do this and talk and thought provoke. Thank you so much for coming on the show today, my friend.
Thanks,
Thank you.
Charlie. Thank you. I know this is long, long overdue. We've been trying to set this up for a long time. But
I'm
yeah, it
happy that
was
it
a
was
great
able to
job.
work out.
I was only there for a year or so. And then, I left to start Castle Island with Matt Walsh. And I felt kind of bad about that because I felt that my job wasn't done at Fidelity. It's like my job was like develop or help develop their view of Bitcoin, their sort of institutional view of Bitcoin, because they were going to create Fidelity Digital Assets, and they needed sell side research basically, which is a job that Ria Batora does amazing work over there now. And there's a bunch of people that chipped in at Fidelity, but
My friend just got
yeah,
hired there as one of the chief marketing officer at Fidelity um, Digital Assets, and he's doing Steve Capone. I had him on the show
Steve,
actually.
yeah, I love great guy,
Amazing guy.
love
He's the one who
Steve.
got me into Voyager. Without him, it's such a great thing. Like the people that you meet.
Totally, totally. Yeah, it was a crazy, crazy job. I mean, I joined in late 2017 too, when everything was absolutely nuts. So it was a weird time. But yeah, my second or third week there, I presented to like Abby Johnson, senior leadership there, just talking about what's the difference between Bitcoin and other crypto assets, developing a taxonomy to help disaggregate them. The whole thing was pretty surreal.
Where was the demand coming from? Like this was before they started. Like, you're talking about huge company, Fidelity, right? They launched a whole separate company based off of early days Bitcoin, but now all of digital assets. In those years, I mean, this was where was that demand coming from? Like,
Yeah.
why were they even investigating this?
Well, they started in 2014, and really, I'm going to give credit to Abby Johnson. The she runs the company. It's a family business. It's the Johnson family. It's always been in the family. It's private, so they can operate more stealthily, right? It's not a publicly traded firm, so they can be a lot more. They have a lot more discretion over what they like look into, as opposed to like a Goldman or JPM. Like everything you do, it gets kind of like reported in the press, so you can't do anything stealthily, and they have to answer to obviously all their public shareholders. Fidelity doesn't have those constraints. So they literally mined a bunch of Bitcoin in 2014 just as an experiment. They put the internal strategy team on it because they identified quote unquote blockchain or Bitcoin as like a highly disruptive technology. So they correctly identified it. And they said, over the next 10 years, we think it could completely disrupt the core of our business. We're an asset management firm. And then they have all these other ancillary businesses that kind of support the asset management side, which is like the economic driver of the business. And so then they just spent 5 years like trying to figure it out. Like, okay, what's our play here? And then eventually they realized that the simplest thing they could do was to support Bitcoin as an asset. But they did all sorts of crazy stuff. Like you could pay for things in the cafeteria with Bitcoin for a while.
Really?
Yeah, which was like kind of a catastrophe,
Yeah.
obviously. They had executives like go around the city of Boston, using Bitcoin ATMs, like trying to go to convenience stores that said they accepted Bitcoin. Like a lot of what, early Bitcoin OGs will remember doing, like trying to transact with Bitcoin at brick and mortar stores. They had their senior executives go and do that stuff in 2014, 15. But then eventually they realized, okay, the number one problem we can solve is custody. And then subsequent to that is like brokerage for institutions. Because the number one question they got from their clients in 2017 was Bitcoin, help me custody Bitcoin. I have Bitcoin. What do I do with it? Will you hold it for me? That kind of thing.
So it was really uh all about Bitcoin um and blockchain. Where did that start to come in? And was there a wrestle? Because even even today we look back and let's look about spending Bitcoin. You gave the perfect example. Spending Bitcoin was used as a positive, but then later on in Bitcoin's history or towards the middle years, right? Is that what I'm calling it now? It was like, well, you can't spend Bitcoin, and that was used as one of the biggest attacks against Bitcoin. Like in fact, like the whole block size debate came from that, like
Yeah,
the inability to spend it, spend it, spend it. But maybe we were all wrong in that maybe its value comes from the ability to earn it and then use it and then store it and save it or whatever. Like maybe earning can replace that spending, because you don't need transaction finality for every single transaction all the time in real time.
of course. And I asked for my salary to be paid in Bitcoin when I joined, but they couldn't support that at the time. I think they'll probably get around to doing it now. My guess would be that they would. Obviously, that's much more common these days. But yeah, I mean, if Bitcoin is like more of this like savings device, this like form of collateral, this sort of like fast settling gold like thing, it doesn't make as much sense for spending, and that's what Fidelity kind of learned. But
Well,
in
spending is a
2014,
product, I think, in
yeah,
the
and
end.
spending can happen with other services that plug into the network. Like today, PayPal announced that you can use your Bitcoin position at PayPal to make purchases with any of their like 29 million merchants in the US. So
It's
of
so
course, what's
cool.
happening behind the scenes is they're sort of liquidating that fiat, and then the merchant gets fiat. But like from your perspective, you're spending with Bitcoin.
Well, you're spending with Bitcoin because now you're collateralizing your Bitcoin because you earned it, and now Bitcoin is your collateral asset that's digital and liquid all the time. It's like your digital house. You can borrow against it in real time. So when you're spending it through a Bitcoin debit card or even with PayPal, it's like you're just reconciling at the end of the month. It's like you're paying your credit card bill, and the credit card companies within that 30 days deals with fraud and chargebacks and blah blah. Spending is a product. Spending doesn't need to be on layer 1 on chain potentially.
Totally.
Who
Yeah, and I
knows?
think the problem is that Bitcoin is actually so useful being a digitally native good that we're seduced by this idea of payments at the base layer. But it's kind of like paying for everything with bank wires. Like you could do that.
Mm.
It would just be, pretty cumbersome. And you're not really using the system in the way that it's sort of in the use case that it is really suitable for at the end of the day.
So now like going back to those years for a second, and and that was that your first quote unquote job in the Bitcoin industry?
Yeah, yeah, in the Bitcoin space, yeah. I mean, I was like a quiet Bitcoiner from sort of 2013 when I mined my first Dogecoin, actually, believe it or not, when I was in school. which was a funny, different story. But from that to 2017, I didn't do anything in the Bitcoin industry. I sort of watched it from the outside, and I was like, well, how do I get into this? I want my career to be in Bitcoin. And it was like a sequence of really lucky coincidences that I ended up being able to make that my career.
And you started in a very interesting job role, and very quickly became like a thought provoker first, not a thought leader yet, like a thought provoker first. I remember reading your early Twitter account, and you very quickly um, gained a very very big following. And I want to ask you, why do you think that happened? Like why do you think that, like, tongue in cheekness, or more so like the ability to kind of like, I hate to say dumb down, but to break down very complicated FUD into, or very complicated topics into like 280 characters. Do you think there was a need for that back then? Why do you think this happened?
I don't know, honestly. To a certain extent, I think I just rode the wave of Bitcoin popularity, and I was one of a bunch of people, really. But I wrote a lot, and I tried to write about Bitcoin in relatively plain terms. And I think people appreciated that. And I tried to basically tell the truth as much as I could. I know that sounds like crazy, but you know, there's something to be said for that. And then also, like, I wasn't afraid to point out what I thought were the dark underbelly of the industry. I actually wrote a piece called "The
Yeah,
Dark Underbelly of the of the
yeah,
crypto markets." And I think people like that because they like it when insiders, not to say that I'm an insider, but people appreciate it when people with
sure.
proprietary knowledge of an industry expose the uglier sides of it to try and cast light on that. And that's what I always tried to do. I don't do as much of it today because it's difficult and like people get mad at me. But that was sort of how I built my brand a little bit.
All right, guys. So, with a pretty crazy, chaotic year behind us, we've got 200 reasons to put your Bitcoin to the test, courtesy of my friends at Bitcasino. And I've gotten you an amazing, amazing offer. You have to go to bitcasino.io/Shrem to get it. But all you have to do is wager 5 MBTC, small amount, wager 5 MBTC or more on Bitcasino on any slot, and you get 200 free spins to their Legacy of Dead game. You get 200 free spins, 200 spins to win more money for free. And all you have to do is do one slot bet. I love these guys. Bitcasino was ahead of the crypto game before that game even got going. The original Bitcoin led online gaming destination. They really, really, really pushed and to continue to set the standard for fun, fast, and fair gameplay. Because you have the blockchain, you might as well be fair and transparent while you're at it. Deposit, wager, and withdraw in Bitcoin, Ethereum, Tron, Litecoin, so many cryptos, all in real time, all the time with Bitcasino. Moving right along. Hey guys, it's Charlie. And remember that time we interviewed Anthony Trenchev from Nexo Finance? Well, they are on a roll right now, offering 5.9% APR on your crypto credit. You'll be able to borrow at less than 6% on some of your crypto. They got a savings account that's offering 12% interest a year. And now they have an integrated exchange so you can trade between all your cryptos without ever leaving their integrated wallet. It's so amazing. Make sure you check it out at nexo.io and start earning interest, start managing your assets, because crypto banking just got real with Nexo. I love that. That's awesome. I love Nexo. It's such a great company. I want you guys to take a moment and check out what the folks and my newest sponsors over at Kava Labs are doing, because up until now, whenever you do anything related to DeFi, like borrowing, lending, loans, bonds, stable coins for Binance, Huobi, Kraken, or all these different places, they actually have been using Kava Labs on the back end. And now you can get those same APYs and those same awesome features that these financial institutions have been getting. You can get them too. All you have to do is go to kava.io and check it out. But on top of that, Kava and Binance, working for International Women's Month, have been launching a $50,000 prize pool that's ending this week. All you have to do is go to Binance or click the link in my show notes. You'll be able to go on there, trade $100. All you do is trade $100 and you get cards that you're entered into drawings that you can get up to $50,000 a part of a prize pool. Make sure you check them out, kava.io.
It's kind of unfair because that needs to happen more, and maybe that falls on like folks like you and myself, uh, because we have the ability to. There are hostile actors that will come out on social media and when you're shedding light, say that you're attacking Bitcoin or you're being hostile,
Right.
and no one
Right.
wants to ever be accused of attacking the one thing that you love and the one thing that you're born and raised. Feel like you're almost like see like almost like your birthright, but that term is kind of outdated, but almost like you were born to do this. Um, and
Yeah.
then
The crypto industry is the least introspective and the least self-critical industry in the world, man.
it's true.
Like
It's
it's
true,
like
but
how the cops have the blue wall of silence, you know what I mean? Where
yes,
they don't rat on each other. Totally the same in crypto. Like if you say anything critical about the industry, it's like, "Hey, bro, what are you doing, man? Like we're all in this together, remember?" You know? So you get demonized, which is like it's hard because like you're constantly straddling this tension. Like you think Bitcoin and public blockchains are like incredibly positive for the world. At the same
yes.
time, there's like a bunch of nonsense going on, and like you can see that certain projects are liable to lose people a lot of money. But it's hard to straddle that line and like feel morally okay about like being a Bitcoiner and being in the crypto space, and always wonder like, am I doing enough to like warn people about the like darker corners of the industry.
Straddling that line. That's the topic that I think about, and I wanted to talk to you because I know you have to think about. You thought about it then. You think about it every day. It's in your investment thesis. I mean, I look at your investment thesis. I'm just going to read it for a second. You say, we believe that permissionless blockchains represent a new form of political economic institution that will fundamentally alter market structures and spawn entirely new industries. And I agree with that, but you say like permissionless blockchains. And then I want to read another quote very quickly. When you had closed your $50 million fund, you said my first, and I love this. You said my first love is Bitcoin, and we're not abandoning Bitcoin. I think that abandoning is like a strong word, but you said
Yeah.
your focus has always been crypto financial market infrastructure, and Bitcoin is not only part of that. And I think, what were you trying to say there? And who were you talking to when you were making that quote?
It's a great question. You're putting me on the spot here. That's definitely the most like sensitive part of our investment case. And it's challenging because you're trying to juggle all these different interest groups. Like on the one hand, you have investors and like potential investors. And what they want is you to be radically open-minded, right? In venture capital, you're not really meant to be narrow-minded. You're meant to be super open-minded to any wacky opportunity that maybe other people haven't cottoned on to yet. So the model for the you know optimal venture capitalist is someone who is completely totally open to any crazy new idea whatsoever. Um, and then you have I myself am a Bitcoiner. That's how I would describe myself politically. Even that is my political
Oh,
affiliation
I like that.
is Bitcoin. I don't belong to a political party. I don't vote.
I'm a
I'm a
Bitcoiner.
Bitcoiner. That's how I express my political views in the world. I think I'm, fomenting positive change. So there's
By the
that. And of course, Bitcoiners don't like it when,
Yeah,
you diversify at all. And so there's that interest group to juggle. And then, of course, you've got entrepreneurs, and entrepreneurs will use the right tool for the task. So sometimes they'll use Bitcoin. And of course, we invest in Bitcoin owning companies. And then sometimes they will use other blockchains. And, honestly, as long as those blockchains work at the way that, they're meant to, and like that's an open question. But as
sure,
long as
yeah.
they do that, I'm not going to begrudge a founder for building on Ethereum, for instance. And that's been like a challenge and a journey that I've had to like undertake here.
But you will begrudge them for choosing Ethereum over another blockchain. So you'll say, why Ethereum and why not Cosmos? Right? Like, they can't just say, I'm choosing Ethereum for the sake of Ethereum. There has to be reasons now, at least in the founders of today. Like today, right now, if someone said to me, came to my family office, said, Charlie, can you help, raise this money? And we're launching on, I don't know, like we're launching on Ethereum. I'm going to say, like, you have an uphill battle proving to me why, when some of the smart money is now moving over to these layer twos or these federated blockchain type of systems where you can run your own blockchain within a federation of others. It's just all these different things because of basically, I guess my point is that everyone has to get a lot smarter, a lot quicker.
Yeah, the way I see startups is that they're all about timing. Like, in a long enough timeline, every good idea basically happens, and every good idea gets built.
That's a good point.
And makes money. But it is about what the right and optimal time for that good idea to emerge is. So, like, if you wanted to create a Bitcoin payments business in 2014, timing was wrong. It was going to be a challenging time to do that. So if you wanted to create, Lightning based DeFi protocol 2018, when Lightning was in its total infancy, that was also the wrong time. And if you wanted to create, I'm trying to think of another example, but like if you wanted to create Netflix in 1995, it wouldn't have worked either. Like Netflix's first business was mailing people DVDs. In fact, they still did that for a long time, actually, believe it or not. So that was their first business, and only later, when like the internet infrastructure, we moved to a new model, broadband, could we have streaming. So you got to think about that. And today, founders that are building business on blockchains, they've got this enormous array of opportunities. Like they could try and go for an L2 on ETH. They could build on Lightning. They can build on a bunch of new, apparently high throughput blockchains. So all I would ask is
there's a lot of them.
So many, yeah. So it doesn't necessarily have to be Bitcoin. Like Bitcoin's not going to be suitable for everything. In fact, there's a lot of things I would say Bitcoin is not suitable for, like the insertion and storage of arbitrary data, or adding tokens on top of Bitcoin base layer, for instance, like we used to do in the past.
Yeah.
So yeah, there's like other places that you can go to do that if you really want to.
So to reconcile kind of like what you're saying and how I think about it, if you take that political class that we're a Bitcoiner, and I love that because I just talked to Dovey Wan. I had her on the show, and she wrote it's like her thing about this Bitcoiner new asset class, and that we're like a shadow organization that's eventually gonna rise and things like that. But I do agree that we do transcend modern day politics and bipartisanship and all that other everything. Like our class, it doesn't matter like color of your skin, where you're from, anything like male, female, all these different other like attributes that we fought over for thousands of years. It all just doesn't matter anymore because of what blockchain is and how it all works. But I wanted to ask if you thought, instead of looking at it as a line, can we look at it more of like a spectrum, right? And Bitcoin is on the is the leader. It is the defining number. Bitcoin is a moving scale, is a moving target of the path to I remember there's a book growing up, you used to read The Path of the Just. So they called The Path to Decentralization, like the path of the Buddha. So you never actually reach full decentralization or whatever that term is, but it's like a path to. And Bitcoin and other blockchains are on that path. And those are the ones that we could include in our Bitcoiner asset class. And we can say that are part of our investment thesis. And these are the ones that are trying to do decentralized, permissionless blockchains, but maybe not as decentralized or not as permissionless as Bitcoin, but they're still on that path or that scale. But then you have other ones like maybe the XRPs and the Ripples that are never want to be fully decentralized, and there are so many of them now. Like 80% of them at launch are fully centralized and can be taken down by one developer right now. Is that a better way to look at things? A spectrum. I know it blurs that line, and we can all come up with our own. This is how this is how I sleep at night. Tell me if I'm okay.
It's about intent. It's about intent. is the team making a credible commitment to actually surrender power? Because that's what it's about, right? It's about power. Do they want to wield centralized control over the protocol in perpetuity? Or do they want to actually build something that will be decentralized and give you all those nice attributes of decentralization, censorship resistance, seizure resistance, strong property rights, things like that Bitcoin gives us? I'm totally prepared to entertain a project that is willing to credibly commit to that. As you say, a lot of projects are not even willing to attempt to become truly decentralized.
How do my
Like you give the
listeners
example of
know?
Ripple.
How can they find out that information? How can they do their own research to find to weed through the shitty ones and then the good ones that are at least on that path or trying or claiming to be? What are some things that we can look at?
I mean, if there's a controlling organization, if there's a CEO, if there's a corporation or a foundation that seems to be wielding a lot of control, if there's a lot of frequent hard forks,
Mm.
you know, where clearly there's developers that are imposing top-down development schedules on the protocol, which is always it should be a red flag because that's a way to potentially change the nature of the system. And we're talking about money here, so rapid changes are dangerous and potentially extractive. So if you notice, highly iterative, rapid software development cycles, that's something to be wary of, frankly. If you notice a small entity or a small group of individuals that effectively exert control, my question to them would be like, well, clearly they're gaining from their proximity to this network. Like they can redirect protocol rewards to themselves if they want. Probably, we see it happen all the time.
I mean, what's the point of even doing this if that's the case?
And given that they have close access to this pot of money, why would they surrender that? So it's hard to envision a world where you have, a blockchain and a corporate entity that basically controls it, and they willingly give up that power over time. Like the way Satoshi did it with no corporate entity, no intellectual property. He didn't take any credit for it, didn't really recognize any of the coins that he mined, never really sold them as far as we can tell.
Isn't that
So
crazy?
from the start, chose to not claim any of the rewards of creating that thing, whether they're reputational rewards or material rewards. That is the best way. Whether a corporate that controls a blockchain can do that is an open question.
Satoshi was very brilliant in that he figured out a way to not only transfer like without almost any latency direct energy into like almost like taking an energy and putting it into a battery. Bitcoin is taking energy and I don't know, tokenizing it or putting a value to it, like perfect balance of supply and demand of the world in a perfect efficient market of like what the value of one unit of energy is or whatever. So now we look at that. Satoshi and or the Satoshi group basically incentivized greed, where they said like Bitcoin mining and keeping the system together, integrity. It all comes down for at the end of the day, we don't want to lose money. We don't want to lose this value. I don't know if greed's the right word.
Mhm.
So in that respect, what do you think motivated Satoshi to do this? Or the Satoshi group? Like I struggle with that because I try to understand like what motivates human beings.
Yeah.
What motivates human beings? We look at some people will say it's money. I think it's no one wants to be buried in a grave alone. No one wants to be forgotten. We want to have a
Mhm.
family. We want to have a wife or a partner, a husband, whatever. But Satoshi gave up both. He gave up the legacy and the greed.
Well, Satoshi's legacy is going to endure over the centuries. And I think choosing to release Bitcoin as a pseudonymous individual or group was the best way to ensure that, because now we have the legend of Satoshi, right? Satoshi is a mythological figure because I can't think of another example where you had someone that gave up and sacrificed so much to bring something so pure and good to the world and collected no apparent gain from having done that. I mean, if Bitcoin goes to $190,000, which is not implausible, Satoshi will be the richest entity man on Earth, right? That's unbelievable, according to the coins that
Yeah.
we
Yeah.
suspect they have. So not only did Satoshi not recognize that wealth, but they also chose to, none of their presumably neighbors, friends, family know that it was them because Satoshi knew that it was a very dangerous thing to do. Satoshi had seen what happened to eGold, saw what happened to the Liberty Reserve, saw the failure of DigiCash, centralized corporate model with David Chaum, the CEO. So all those models failed. So the only way for this thing to succeed was to liberate it and to free it from Satoshi's desire for recognition. To me, that's mythological. I mean, what human has that amount of restraint, basically?
That's what I'm asking you.
Yeah,
It's
I don't know. It's unbelievable almost. So I think that's Satoshi's legacy, and I think it's incredibly pure, and that is part of what gives Bitcoin so much strength. That the origins of Bitcoin are so pristine. I mean, really, like a new monetary network with an origin story this good. It's like, how freaking lucky are we that Satoshi was this
I
unbelievably
know.
sort of generous and self-sacrificial person.
It's a very it's the best thing about Bitcoin, but it's also the scariest part about this whole
It's
industry.
humbling. It's humbling that that this network was initiated by someone so apparently unwilling to actually collect monetary gains from
Do
the
you think
network.
do you think that's why institutions uh or these acceptance of it now, do you think the Satoshi like mythology has helped it or hurt it?
Helped 100%. I know you see it as risk factors in like the Coinbase S1, like you see, oh, could Satoshi return? That's a risk. But generally,
Oh, I didn't even read
Sa-
that.
yeah, that's in there. That's in there.
Oh, that sounds like
Um,
good reading.
it is. It is really interesting. Yeah, I mean, with the risk factors in IPOs, people don't realize sometimes the lawyers will just do a total brain dump and think of everything conceivably bad that could happen, put it on the page. So when a firm has those risk factors, it doesn't necessarily mean that they
Sure.
actually expect that thing to happen. But just caveat that. Yeah, I mean, from my experience talking with institutions, which is part of my job, and one of the things I try to do, quote unquote, for Bitcoin is help them along that journey of understanding it. Is emphasize that this thing is leaderless and that the originator is long gone and that there was no fee, there's no extraction. Satoshi didn't allocate themselves 20% of the coins or whatever. And I think that fact that it's this organic bottom up movement, truly grassroots movement, totally appeals to them, and it gives Bitcoin a lot more legitimacy, frankly.
My second biggest fear is the coming attack that I see coming on not the industry, but Bitcoin specifically, and it's the energy attack. We
Yeah.
see rumblings of it now, but this is going to be a coordinated effort between all enemies of Bitcoin, between the people that don't like cryptocurrency, and then those blockchains that align themselves with those who never liked cryptocurrency as a whole. And that's going to be very dangerous, obviously, for
Hmm.
those. It's like when when the Saxons would align with the Danes, and it never ended up being a good idea. For those who read the Last Kingdom or whatever, Saxon Tales, great life history books right there. By the way, I love your mug. For those who are not watching, you should be. He has an. I'm not going to describe the mug to you because you're going to want it. So now I hope you go on YouTube and watch the show instead. Uh,
Okay.
no, it's the magic internet money, our Bitcoin,
Yeah.
famous logo. That
That
someone,
pa- that that ugly MS Paint drawing of a wizard was
yeah.
what really helped get me into Bitcoin in 2013 because it was the ad on Reddit, and I thought it was so stupid. And I was like, okay, like I'll go see what this Bitcoin subreddit's all
We
about,
don't
and then I
take
was hooked.
ourselves too seriously, right?
That's what I love about it. That's the best part. I mean, this is very serious in one way. Like you're
Yeah.
just describing a coming attack on the network is going to be really genuine and difficult to deal with, but also like it's magic internet money. You
Yeah.
have to be lighthearted about it.
This attack is going to say, so the only physical manifestation of Bitcoin and coincidentally, the most important aspect of one of the most important aspects of our industry are Bitcoin miners. It creates a beautiful checks and balances system in Bitcoin, but at the same time, it's the first like physical manifestation. Knowing that, knowing that there has always been so much fear, uncertainty, and doubt of that Bitcoin hogging up all of the world's energy, my fear is that that miners around the world will further be attacked, and then that the fear, uncertainty, and doubt, coupled with like loss of hash power because some miners are moving or turning off, or there's just coordinated FUD. That is one of my biggest fears going into the next 3 years.
Yeah, I mean, and we saw what just happened in Inner Mongolia, which is not Mongolia the country, but that's a province in China, where Inner Mongolia's grid is about 70% coal and non-renewable, and about 30% wind and solar. This is something people don't know. They actually have abundant wind and solar. But the Chinese government basically banned mining in that province because they felt that it was sort of hogging grid resources. So I expect that that will happen in other places where miners are mining on grid,
Mm.
right? But the good news is that there's so many other places where Bitcoin can exploit these little pockets of stranded energy that Bitcoin has a good future sort of off grid or in countries that have too much energy, overabundant energy, which is actually a bunch of different places. And with hydro in particular is a common form of overabundant energy. So while I do expect Bitcoin mining installations to be chased out of certain jurisdictions, it's just going to equilibrate. It'll reconstitute where and Bitcoin doesn't care where it's mined, and it doesn't really care
Doesn't
about the
matter.
absolute level of hash power either. Like it could go down 30%, wouldn't make a difference. Could go up, wouldn't make a difference. So it's just this really malleable thing that is able to resist all these shocks. And frankly, if grid authorities mine or ban Bitcoin mining on grid, that's a good thing as far as I'm concerned.
Yes, that would be an amazing thing uh, if we had the infrastructure already built to support it, which is happening now. You're seeing uh, huge amounts of better energy creation that's better for the environment, that's cheaper and more efficient, better for the earth. Well, I already said that, but I want to say it again. Why? Because Bitcoin miners need all of that and want all of that. There's now an economic drive for all of those things that I just described. So these environmental groups should be thanking us. And you wrote an article that was so good, no objectivity on Bitcoin mining. And I'm not sure I can read the numbers here, but like we were talking about in those movies about the old Iraq war, when you'd see them driving and there were these big, and for, you guys know what I'm talking about, those big, they have them in Texas, those big metal electricity
Flares.
poles that burning gas,
Yeah.
like gas is burning or fire, and you're like, you think that's normal. That's not normal. That's because there's the cost of taking that energy and bringing it to a place where that energy is demanded is too high. So they just burn off the gas. It's wasted energy. Do
Yeah.
you think all of that wasted energy, if it was able to be harnessed, could actually support the current Bitcoin network, Nick?
Yes, it absolutely could. It could support it 5 to 10 times over just in the US alone. I ran the numbers. You can do it yourself too. You can go to the Energy Administration. You can they have numbers on vented or flared gas in the US, and as you say, that's a waste byproduct of oil extraction because they don't want the natural gas. They're off grid. There's no pipeline infrastructure at most of these wells. Natural gas isn't worth very much right now, so it's not worth it to capture it. And so what all these guys do is they flare it off. That was 1% of the natural gas extraction last year was this waste byproduct at oil wells, which couldn't be put to use. So because Bitcoin is a buyer of energy anywhere 24/7, you can set an installation down, and this is what a lot of startups and firms I'm aware of are doing, put that to work, combust it in a cleaner way because it's in a controlled way now in a generator, and that could support the Bitcoin network. The official estimates you'll get about venting and flaring are way conservative estimates. The analysts I've talked to in the energy industry tell me that the unofficial estimates are likely 5 to 10 times higher. And if you convert that into terawatt hours, you get a figure, even with the conservative official estimates, that basically the Bitcoin network in its current form could be supported just by venting and flaring, just in the US alone. So,
Call it.
and that's sort of carbon neutral, because that venting and flaring is going to happen anyway, because it's a byproduct of oil mining.
That's insane. It's insane that information like this won't come out. You talk about fear, uncertainty, and doubt being written in some of these articles and in news, like in Bloomberg, and then you come out and simply post the numbers, and we've talked about it, and I feel like we've rang this bell so many times over, but they won't listen. And then unfortunately, the proof of stake crowd is really warming to this anti-environmental idea. I see it. If I see a white paper or a freaking business deck that attacks the energy aspect of Bitcoin, I'm going to burn it, because it just shows that you don't know how to do your own research. So for all the founders that are attacking Bitcoin for all these environmental reasons, and you're looking at proof of stake proof of stake in its current form defies all laws of physics. It won't work in the long term, because it just amasses power in the control of a few people who would never want change, because there will be no benefit to them in the long term.
Yeah, I mean, proof of stake, people think it's a new concept. It's not. Proof of stake is the old model, right? Where the more coins or wealth you have, the more political power you have. That's what proof of stake means. That's the old model. The Bitcoin proposes an alternative to. The more Bitcoins you have, that doesn't give you any control over consensus. And we learned this empirically in 2017. We had the user-activated soft fork. We had the 2x movement was defeated. So like various entities that are wealthy in Bitcoin terms tried to commandeer Bitcoin and change it. And the Bitcoin community rejected that. Proof of stake just restores the old model, where if you're a big institution or firm, you have political power. And what's going to happen if these coins go mainstream? All of the coins are going to settle on exchanges, banks, financial institutions, and then they will have control over the network under a proof of stake system. So yes, you avoid some of the energy externalities, but you're also not doing anything new. So I don't see the merit.
I love it. I love it. Nic, how can my listeners follow you, your blog and your Twitter and your podcast?
Well, everything is aggregated at my personal website, niccarter.info. That also runs on Handshake, which is a decentralized domain system. So I own the Nic Carter Handshake domain. That's right. So if you can resolve
how do
those
I build
domains,
this? I just want to copy. Even your site is beautiful. I just want to copy the layout and everything. Is it hard to build?
Oh no, it was easy. I did it in an hour on WordPress.
And Handshake? Okay, cool.
Well, it's meant to be very simple and easy to navigate. But yeah, that's my website. And then I'm on Twitter, Nic__Carter. That's 2 underscores.
Nic__Carter. You can follow me. I need to create a list of all the podcast guests' Twitter accounts, because that list would be like that 170 list would be the perfect, because I have guests who would fully disagree with everything that you just said. And I have guests that disagree with everything I just said, but it's my show, so I can do whatever I want. Thanks everyone for listening. I appreciate it. And don't forget to help out all the sponsors.
Thanks, Charlie. This was good, man.
I'll talk to you later.